You know, we're all taught that Georgia was founded as this big charity project for debtors. But what if I told you the truth is a lot more intense, that it was really about creating a human shield? In this explainer, we're going to dig into how these massive competing empires, some pretty utopian dreams, and just pure military strategy came together to forge a colony that is way, way more complex than the myths we learn in school.
All right, so here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start before the colony even existed, in a land of empires and chiefdoms. Then we'll get into the founding experiment itself and really separate the facts from the fiction. After that, we'll see how all the rules, rum, and a little rebellion just tore that whole experiment apart, leading to the rise of a totally new Royal Georgia.
So long before Georgia was a name on a British map, this land was a seriously contested frontier. It was already home to a thriving civilization, and for the big empires in Europe, it was a strategic prize that could totally tip the balance of power in the New World.
For centuries, the Mississippian people had built this incredible, powerful society right here. So, you gotta forget any idea of an empty wilderness. We're talking a network of large towns, really complex farming, huge trade networks. I mean, it was sophisticated. But for all its strength, their civilization was tragically vulnerable to an invisible invader, the diseases that showed up with the very first Europeans.
Okay, this slide really gets to the heart of the whole imperial conflict. On one side, you've got England playing the long game with mercantilism. They wanted permanent, productive colonies that would make the mother country rich. But on the other side, you have Spain, driven by the famous 3Gs, God, gold, and glory. Their whole focus was on extraction, not really long-term settlement. And Georgia was about to be founded smack dab on the volatile front line between these two completely opposing worldviews. So with that imperial rivalry humming in the background, we get to the founding of Georgia itself. And this is exactly where that simple story you learned in school just completely falls apart from the calculated reality of what was happening.
Right, so the story we all hear is that Georgia was founded by the benevolent James Oglethorpe as a safe haven for England's poor, a second chance for people who were locked away in debtors' prisons.
And it's a nice story, it really is. But the historical record reveals something kind of shocking. Not a single debtor was ever actually released from prison to go settle Georgia. Oglethorpe's philanthropic goals were definitely real, but they came in second to a much, much more strategic mission.
So what were the real reasons? Well, this slide lays out the official three-part plan. Yep, philanthropy was on the list, a fresh start for the worthy poor. Economics was a big one too. The idea was to grow these valuable WRIST crops like wine and silk. But the number one, the absolute, non-negotiable reason was defense. Georgia's primary purpose was to be a military buffer, that human shield, to protect the incredibly profitable colony of South Carolina from the Spanish down in Florida.
This whole experiment really depended on the relationship between these three remarkable people. You had Oglethorpe, who brought the vision and the leadership. You had Tomochichi, the Yamakra chief, who saw the huge benefit of an English alliance and generously provided the land for Savannah. And then you had Mary Musgrove, who could navigate both the Creek and English worlds, and she was the absolutely essential link that made their whole friendship and cooperation even possible.
Now from their cushy offices back in London, the trustees designed Georgia to be this perfect, ordered society, and they created a super strict set of rules to enforce that vision. But, utopian ideals rarely survive contact with reality, and in Georgia, the clash was immediate, and it was intense.
I mean, this was a radical social experiment. The trustees looked at the huge plantations and the massive social inequality in South Carolina and basically said, we want the exact opposite. So they banned slavery to create a colony of small, hardworking farmers. They banned rum to prevent, laziness, and they put really strict limits on land ownership. It was a utopian vision, for sure, but it was also incredibly restrictive.
And this just brilliantly illustrates the diverse groups that were drawn to this new colony. Oglethorpe actually bent the rules to let in a group of Portuguese Jews, all because they had a doctor who basically saved the colony from a fever outbreak. Then you had the Salzburgers, these Protestant refugees who became the most industrious settlers and were fiercely anti-slavery. And get this, the Highland Scots were brought in specifically for their fighting skills to beef up that buffer mission.
But as you can imagine, this utopian vision wasn't for everyone. A really powerful opposition group started to form, and they became known as the malcontents. Now, these weren't the charity settlers. These were folks who had often paid their own way to get to Georgia, and they saw the trustees' strict rules not as some moral high ground, but as a direct obstacle to their own prosperity.
And right here is the heart of their whole argument. They looked right next door to South Carolina, saw the insane amount of wealth being generated by huge rice plantations worked by enslaved people, and they wanted the same opportunity. They didn't see the bans on slavery and land sales as moral principles. They saw them as economic roadblocks.
So the pressure from the malcontents, combined with the colony's own economic failures, just proved to be too much. The experiment began to fall apart piece by piece. First, the rum ban just became impossible to enforce. Then Oglethorpe, the colony's founder and biggest champion, left for good. Finally, the trustees caved. They allowed slavery in 1750, and just a year later, they surrendered the charter altogether. The utopian dream was officially over.
The end of the trustee period wasn't just a change in management. It was a total reversal of the colony's founding purpose. With the king now in charge, Georgia was reborn as a royal colony, and its whole identity was about to be completely rewritten.
The transformation is just, well, it's stark when you see it side by side like this. On pretty much every single point, Royal Georgia became the mirror opposite of what the trustees wanted. Slavery wasn't just allowed, it became the engine of the entire economy. The strict land rules were scrapped. The colony basically shed its experimental skin and remade itself in the image of its wealthy, slave-powered neighbor, South Carolina.
And if you want to see the impact of that one decision to allow slavery, look no further than this chart. The numbers are just staggering. In just 25 years, the enslaved population exploded from fewer than 500 people to over 18,000. This wasn't some gradual shift. It was a violent, fundamental reshaping of Georgia's entire society from the ground up. With the slavery ban gone, the malcontents got exactly what they wanted. The colony's economy pivoted to a plantation model built on staple crops like rice and indigo. And yeah, these crops generated immense wealth, but they were incredibly labor-intensive, relying on the very system of human bondage the colony was founded to prohibit. So that's the story, and it leaves us with this one powerful question. How did an anti-slavery experiment become a slave-based economy so incredibly quickly? The journey from this philanthropic anti-slavery buffer state to a royal slave-based plantation economy, it just reveals this fascinating and frankly troubling tension between high-minded founding ideals and the powerful economic forces that can ultimately overwhelm them.